Hello everyone, a very good evening and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to our weekly webinar. Every Thursday, we have this current affairs webinar which is focused on mains answer writing. So today, we shall be taking up some important current affairs developments of the last 1 week and we shall discuss them largely from a mains point of view. I'll also give you some practice questions and the discussion will be structured in such a manner that it should help you write answers to these questions. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics we are going to cover. I have chosen three important topics from polity, ethics, science and technology, etc. Apart from these three topics, which are in current affairs, we are also going to discuss two important articles from last month's Kurukshetra magazine. As you all know, the Kurukshetra magazine is important for your mains exam. So in the August edition of the Kurukshetra, the magazine focused on the topic of nutrition. This edition from the month of August, it was paying special attention to the issue of nutrition and how it affects women and children, especially malnutrition, the lack of adequate nutrition, how it can affect the health, the economic and social well-being of women and children. That is the focus of the Kurukshetra magazine. So from the magazine, I have chosen two very important articles that can be relevant for the mains exam. So these are the five topics we are going to cover comprehensively in today's discussion. Is that clear? So let's begin with the first topic from Indian polity. Let's focus on the Women's Reservation Bill, which was making a lot of news over the last 1 week. As you all know, the government of India has introduced the 128th Constitutional Amendment Bill into the Parliament, and both the houses, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, both have passed the bill with near unanimous support. Almost all the members in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, except for a few members, have backed the Women's Reservation Bill, which is going to bring about a constitutional amendment. This landmark piece of legislation was in the making from many, many years. This provides for reservation for women in the parliament, that is in the Lok Sabha, and also in state assemblies. This encourages greater women participation in electoral politics in India. This could become a vital tool for women empowerment and to promote gender equality in the country. It will provide a wonderful opportunity for women to play a bigger role in politics, in decision making and policy making, and in administration and governance. So this important bill has been passed by the parliament and very soon it is going to become an act. This constitutional amendment will bring some necessary changes that will provide for 33% reservation for women as far as Indian elections are concerned. So let us discuss the history of this topic. There is an important background connected to this. You should understand why reservation is needed for women. What is the previous historical developments in this regard? You should understand the significance of this legislative move, right? What will change with this constitutional amendment? What changes will happen, right? What are the features of this constitutional amendment bill? What is its significance? And are there any challenges in implementing these provisions? So we need to carry out a thorough assessment of the bill because you can definitely expect a mains question or even an essay topic based on this issue. So if you look at the history of women's reservation, this issue has been discussed since the colonial times. Since the days of British India, there had been a proposal to provide separate electorate for women, to provide reserved seats for women. Even the Constituent Assembly of India, that is after India became independent, even the Constituent Assembly held a debate on whether women should be provided reservation just like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes were being provided with reservation. Because see, reservation is a policy of affirmative action. Reservation is designed to help the weaker classes, to help the backward communities, and to help the vulnerable communities. So, in a patriarchal society like India, where male domination was the norm, right, women had been left behind with regard to their education, their health, their progress, their role in politics, right? Women had very limited representation. And as a result, as a community, women had become vulnerable. So the Constituent Assembly did consider the provision of affirmative action, that is, reservation for women candidates in the parliament and state assemblies. But eventually, it didn't get enough support because several members argued that providing reservation would highlight that women are inferior to men, that women need special protection, special status to achieve their progress and development. So there was a heated debate within the Constituent Assembly, and finally, the constitution makers concluded that women's reservation is not necessary at this point. Following this, in the 1970s, the United Nations had asked for a report from all the countries regarding the status of women in their country. In 1975, the International Women's Year was being marked by the UN, and the UN had called for a report from all the members to figure out what is the status of empowerment of women. So accordingly, the Ministry of Education, Social Welfare, the then Ministry of Education and Social Welfare, established a committee to inquire the status of women in the country. This committee brought out some very, very important findings. The committee established that women have remained backward with regard to their education, with regard to their participation in the labor force. There was very limited role of women in politics, in governance, in public policy, and hence the committee had recommended the provision of reservation for women in electoral politics. But however, the government did not take up the recommendation. The central government wouldn't take it up due to lack of political support. But few state governments, they started introducing reservation at the local level. In 1970s, 1980s, at the level of local bodies, at the panchayat level, at the third tier of administration, few states brought out reservation for women. But again, this was not a constitutional provision, right? Few states were doing it on their own. In fact, local bodies, your panchayat raj institutions, municipal bodies, they themselves weren't constitutional bodies in 1970s, 1980s. They were given constitutional status much later in 1990s through the 73rd, 74th constitutional amendment. So some of the states took this initiative on their own. Wherever local bodies were functioning, a certain percentage of seats were reserved for women candidates. This was the first move in India at the state level and panchayat level where reservation was provided for women candidates. Then, the first national initiative regarding women's reservation was undertaken by the then Rajiv Gandhi government in the year 1987. Under Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, a committee had been set up under the chairmanship of Margaret Alva, the then Union Minister. This committee was the National Perspective Committee for Women that would bring out a national perspective plan for promoting women empowerment and to tackle gender inequality in the Indian society. This committee, headed by Margaret Alva, also recommended that seats have to be reserved for women in elected bodies. Starting right from the parliament to state assemblies to local bodies, reservation was recommended at the national level for the first time under the Rajiv Gandhi government. But again, the proposal wasn't taken forward due to lack of political will and political support. But finally, a landmark step was initiated under the 73rd, 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, which was brought out under the Narasimha Rao government. Under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, local bodies, the Panchayati Raj institutions, the PRIs, and your municipal bodies in urban areas, they were given constitutional status. This democratized governance in India. It introduced decentralized three-tier administration across the country with constitutional status. So under the 73rd, 74th Amendment Acts, the Panchayati Raj institutions and municipal bodies were provided with reservation for women. Reserved seats for the first time constitutionally was provided at, at the local bodies at the grassroots. And even within SCs, STs and OBCs, this reservation would apply for women candidates. The reserved seats would not just be for general candidates, not just in the general category, but reserved seats for women would also apply within the reservation provided for SCs, STs, and OBCs. Because that is how you can truly provide for inclusive reservation for all communities and to ensure that women have equitable representation. So this was a landmark move. A very big constitutional change happened through 73rd, 74th Amendment that gave constitutional status to the local bodies and provided for reserved seats for women even within the reserved categories. Is that clear? So now reservation had been introduced at the grassroots, but reservation for women was not provided at the state level and national level. Now, of course, you might ask, why do women need reservation? What is the need? What's the purpose? Right? To answer this question, we should take a look at the representation of women in politics. You should see the representation of women in the parliament. You should understand the representation of women in our state assemblies. Then you will get a fair idea as to why women would need reservation in elected bodies. So now reservation had been introduced in local bodies, but similar reservation had not been provided at the parliament and state assemblies. Now let me present some data to justify why women reservation is valid and why political parties across the spectrum have supported this policy. If you look at the 17th Lok Sabha, the current Lok Sabha, out of the total MPs that we have, just 15% of them are women candidates. Just 15% of your MPs in the current Lok Sabha are women. This is way below the global average. Even countries like Kenya, Pakistan are ahead of India. They have higher representation for women. Is that clear? So this is a very disappointing number. It means women are playing a smaller role in politics. They're not too involved in governance, and it's not their fault. The fault lies with the patriarchy in the society, the orthodox nature of the society where there is male domination in every sector, including in politics. So there is a need to provide women with greater representation, and providing reservation in elections is one way to do that. This will allow women to play a bigger role in policy making and in governance. They could play a direct role in looking at women issues, in deciding upon issues related to gender equality. They could play a greater role and bring their contribution to the field of lawmaking, policy making, and executive action. That is why women deserve reservation, because it is a vital tool to provide for empowerment of women, to tackle the social evils in the society, to ensure safety of women, security of women, to ensure they have access to education, quality healthcare, to tackle other evils like child marriage, child labor, then dowry, right? Providing reservation to women and making them policy makers would provide the best opportunity where women will have enhanced representation and they could play a bigger role in lawmaking and policy making. This is what justifies reservation for women in elected bodies. But however, there is a concern here. One concern is that if reservation is given, what is the guarantee that women alone will contest these seats? Right? Let me point out one major discrepancy that we noticed when women reservation was given in local bodies. It's almost been 3 decades plus, 30 years plus since women reservation was given at local bodies. One major problem we have noticed is that women candidates are being used as proxies by their husbands or by their fathers or by their brothers sometimes even by their sons. Essentially, in the reserved seats, women candidates will contest. They will win the election, and only a women candidate will be eligible to become a candidate to contest in that particular seat. But the fact is that these women, they have been fielded as proxies by the male leaders in that region. Just because the seats are reserved for women candidates, the male candidates, they field a women candidate from their family, and they actually exercise the true authority and power. I personally have seen few panchayats where a women candidate would have been elected at the gram panchayat and zilla panchayat, but the husband or another male member from the family would be taking all the decisions. The elected women candidate would have been sidelined. And this is another important feature, a disastrous feature of Indian society. Right? In the name of women candidates, the men are still running these local bodies. In fact, at local bodies, even at the chairperson level, there is reservation. Even at the chairperson level, the chairperson of Gram Panchayat, Taluk Panchayat, Zilla Panchayat, even at this level, there is reservation for women. This reservation varies from 33% to 50% from state to state. This constitutional reservation, which was given in local bodies, it is minimum 33% in most of the states, but some states have increased it to up to 50%. But the problem we had noticed was that there was a big anomaly. The anomaly was that instead of the women candidates taking the decisions, their husbands, their sons or brothers or fathers would be acting on behalf of them. Basically, these women candidates were proxies for them. This is blatant misuse of the policy. It's a blatant misuse of the policy of reservation. But however, you need to note, that studies have established that women reservation in local bodies has had a positive impact as far as women's participation is concerned. As far as the participation of women in politics, in policy making is concerned, a definite positive change has been noted. A paradigm shift has been noted. Over the last 3 decades of implementation of reservation at local bodies, definitely women candidates have played a bigger role. Maybe some of them have been proxies to the male members in their family, but there have been other women candidates who have asserted themselves, who have broken the barriers of their family and society, and they have done an incredible job in their villages, in their panchayats, in leading governance and policy initiatives. This has been very well documented by various committees and by various studies. So this again gives a justification that women reservation is indeed important. It can push for greater participation of women and give them better rights, that is political rights, through which they can play a bigger role in policy making and law making. Even though there has been a misuse where women candidates have been used just as proxies by male members, there are many cases where women candidates have asserted themselves and they have done an incredible job. So this is a justification, right? This justifies reservation for women. Imagine if 33% of the seats in parliament and state assemblies are occupied by women candidates. Imagine the contribution they can make to India's polity and to India's legal landscape. Shift in between. Okay. Yeah. Apologies, guys, for the interruption. There is unfortunately a lot of background noise in this particular studio. Just give us a couple of minutes. We are going to shift the studio and we'll come back with the live session. Just wait for a couple of minutes. We're going to come back live. Stop. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the session. And again, apologies for the interruption. There was a slight issue with the background noise. So I think now it must be much better. So, yeah, before we stopped, we were talking about the need for women reservation and the history of women reservation in India. So, following the reservation that was provided at local bodies, at the national level, initiatives were taken by various governments under subsequent prime ministers to provide for women reservation in parliament and in state assemblies as well. In fact, multiple attempts were made. In 1996, under Prime Minister Deve Gowda, an attempt was made, but it failed due to lack of political support. Then again, under I.K. Gujral, another attempt was made, but this again did not get the right support within the parliament, and as a result, the initiative was derailed. Then under Prime Minister Vajpayee, couple of attempts were made, but again, due to lack of support, women's reservation could not be provided. In 2008, under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, a bill was drafted, the 108th Constitution Amendment Bill. It was introduced in the Rajya Sabha as well. The Rajya Sabha even passed the bill, but due to differences between political parties, it couldn't be taken up at the Lok Sabha. The bill eventually lapsed, and again, the efforts had failed. So basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that women reservation, this topic has been in the limelight for many, many years. It's not a new issue or a new development. From many years, many governments, many leaders, many political parties have tried to support this issue, but due to various circumstances, largely due to political differences, it was not able to carry out the constitutional amendment. Now, finally, through the 128th Constitution Amendment Bill, which has been passed by the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, finally, reservation for women is being provided in the parliament and state assemblies. Is that clear? Very soon, the bill will receive the assent of the president. It will become an act. The necessary constitutional changes will happen, and it will take some time to implement the changes. So that is what we will focus upon in the next part of the discussion. We will take a look at the key features of the bill, what changes will happen, what implementation measures have to be taken up, and we'll also discuss the challenges in implementing women reservation. Is that clear? So according to the Constitution Amendment Bill, 1/3 of all the seats, that is basically 33% of all the seats in the Lok Sabha, in all the state legislative assemblies, including the Legislative Assembly of Delhi, in the Union Territory of Delhi, right? This is where the reservation will be provided, and seats will be reserved within SC/ST categories. Please make a note of this point. Within the current SC/ST reservation which is given in Lok Sabha and state assemblies, within that as well, 1/3 of the SC seats, 1/3 of ST seats will be reserved for women candidates from SC/ST community. This ensures equitable representation for all communities. But however, it does not apply in the current form. It does not apply for OBC category. Within OBC reservation, women reservation has not been provided in the current version of the Constitutional Amendment Bill. So 1/3 seats in the parliament, in all state assemblies, including Delhi, will be reserved, including reservation within SC/ST category, except for OBCs. So when will this reservation start? Will it start immediately? Will it apply for the next elections, which will happen in 2024? No, it won't. It will take few years to bring this into effect. Because to provide for women's reservation, to reserve the constituencies for women candidates, the delimitation exercise has to be carried out. What is delimitation? Delimitation is the process of redrawing the boundaries of a constituency. Within a state, the limits or the boundaries of a constituency is redrawn by the Delimitation Commission. The Parliament passes the Delimitation Commission Act, and a Delimitation Commission is set up, which will have extraordinary powers to redraw the boundaries of constituencies. So it is the Delimitation Commission which has the powers of a court. Even courts cannot inquire into the final orders of the Delimitation Commission once the constituencies are finalized. It is this commission which will finalize the number of seats from each state, the number of constituencies, and it will decide the number of reserved seats, which constituencies will be reserved for SCs, for STs, similarly for women as well. But to carry out the delimitation, census data is needed, right? You need some basis to redraw the boundaries of constituencies. So delimitation is dependent on census data. And as you know, census for 2021 has not been conducted. Census in India is a decennial exercise conducted once in a decade. But 2021 census has been delayed due to the pandemic, and even the current government has given various reasons, and it has postponed the census exercise. Even if census had taken place, delimitation cannot be taken up until 2025 because delimitation has been frozen in the 1970s after the last delimitation, right? Delimitation was frozen until the end of the millennium. This was done in order to achieve population stabilization, to ensure that each constituency will roughly have the same population, because that is when you'll have a truly representative democracy, right? In every constituency, there should roughly be the same population, right? That is when each MP will have roughly the same number of voters in each constituency, and that is what provides for a truly representative democracy. So population plays a big role in determining the number of seats that are assigned to a state. So in 1970s, when the delimitation exercise was done, delimitation was frozen until 2000, until 2001, in order to achieve population stabilization. Then in 2001, another round of delimitation was taken up, but however, it extended the next round until 2025. So delimitation exercise has been frozen from many decades in order to allow the states to achieve population stabilization, to achieve population control, basically. So unless and until this deadline is crossed, that is 2025 has to be crossed, only then a new delimitation exercise can be taken up. And it also depends when the next census will happen. So these two exercises might take some time, right? The next census most likely will happen only after 2025. By then, the freeze on delimitation will also expire. The next delimitation can be carried out by establishing another delimitation commission. So this exercise will take a couple of years or maybe 1 or 2 years. And only then reservation can be provided for women. So it's going to take a few years, maybe the end of the decade, maybe 2031, right? It might take a few years before we realize this dream. But at least the first step has been taken. Now the legal processes are to be taken up. The seats which will be reserved through delimitation exercise will rotate. Now, for example, in the next delimitation exercise, 33% seats will be reserved. So those constituencies will be identified. So that will continue for subsequent elections. But when the next delimitation happens, maybe 1 decade later, right, these constituencies will rotate. The reserved seats for women will rotate. Another set of constituencies will be reserved for women candidates, so that across the country, the constituencies will be rotated to provide for more equitable representation for women candidates. These are the key features of the bill, right? It provides 1/3 reservation in all the elected bodies from parliament to state assemblies, provides reservation within SC/ST category as well, but does not include reservation within OBC category. It is dependent on when census and delimitation exercise will happen. And once it is implemented, it will apply for a period of 15 years only. Unless and until the parliament decides to amend and extend the time limit, it is going to apply only for 15 years. That is the current provision which has been provided. And the constituencies which are going to be reserved, it will rotate after every delimitation exercise. These are the key provisions. Now, as I was explaining, the primary purpose of granting reservation is to provide an opportunity for women to influence policy making. See, there is a UN convention called the CEDAW Convention. It stands for Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's a UN convention. India is a signatory to the CEDAW Convention. We are part of it. India is a signatory to the convention. We are committed to ending all forms of discrimination against women. Because be it in the society, be it in education, in politics, in the labor market, everywhere there is a degree of discrimination against women. This is a result of patriarchy in the society. It's a result of gender inequality in the society. So, under the CEDAW Convention, India has an obligation to increase the representation of women in policy making bodies and decision making bodies. So, in a way, we are fulfilling our international commitment as well. By providing for greater representation, we are fulfilling a constitutional commitment and as well as a global commitment to allow women MPs to have more representation in the parliament, in the state assemblies, and play a bigger role in policy making. Yes, there is a concern of women candidates being used as proxies by the men in their household. But however, there are empirical studies which shows that women reservation at local bodies has had a positive impact. Despite the misuse of women's reservation, there are many cases, many instances where women candidates at panchayats, at municipal bodies have done a phenomenal job in raising the voice of women candidates and bringing up women issues and concerns. Is that clear? Issues affecting pregnant women, issues affecting the safety of women, right? Issues affecting the education, the livelihood of women. Such core basic issues can be brought up by women candidates with more sensitivity, and they can play a big role in policy making and in governance. This is where the importance lies with regard to reservation for women. It could even help in checking criminalization of politics. It could help in bringing down corruption. It could bring more efficiency into governance in the long run, right? There are many positive benefits which might arise from the policy of reservation for women candidates. But however, in implementing the reservation, there's going to be a lot of challenges. In implementation, there could be many issues which are going to come up. So let's quickly talk about the issues in implementation and then we can close the discussion. One major issue which has been flagged by experts is that whether the reservation will be an effective instrument for their empowerment. This is obviously a big question mark. Just by providing reservation for 1/3 seats, can we guarantee the empowerment of women? That is a big question. Of course, the answer is no. This alone is not enough. There should be greater gender equality in the society. Just providing women reservation will not solve every problem that is affecting women in the country. We need to strive towards gender equality in the society. For example, in patriarchal societies, you look at household work. The entire burden of household work has been dumped on women in the family. I'm sure you notice this in your own family as well, in your own circle, right? It's only your mother, your sister, your daughters, or your wives who are pushed to take up household work, to cook food, to clean, wash, etc. Whereas men don't face the same burden. Of course, there will be exceptions, but in general, there is a excessive, unnecessary burden on women to carry out household work. Now, this affects women's participation in the economy and it also affects their participation in politics. Because women are preoccupied, they are forced to be preoccupied in the house and they're not even recognized for the household work, right? They're not getting paid for it. They're not getting any recognition for all the household work they do. This limits women to the household. It prevents them from playing a bigger role in the society because they don't have the time, they don't have the energy left after doing all the household chores. Several studies have established this, that in several households where patriarchy prevails, men don't do any kind of work. Yes, men go work outside, but they don't take up any household chores. It is entirely pushed on the women of the household, right? This restricts the activity of women, the participation of women in the economy. That is why in India, labor force participation of women is very less. If you take our labor force, the number of people who are working in the formal and also in informal sector, right? The number of men who are working is much higher compared to the number of women who are working. Because most of the women are cornered to the household and they're not even being recognized for the work they're doing. And this is unpaid work that they're doing. Correct? So these kind of issues have to be sorted. We have to provide better education, protect the health and nutrition of women, because women do have special needs, physiological needs, right? They face a bigger risk with regard to their health, their sexual reproductive health. So there needs to be greater support from the state, from the society, to provide for better education, better health care, better access, and a stable livelihood for women, so they can stand on their own. They can be independent without depending on the family and the male members of the family. So this has to be achieved in tandem with providing reservation. That is when you'll achieve true women empowerment. Just providing reservation alone will not solve all the problems. Yes, there are concerns how effective this will be, but in the long run, this could play a very big role and could have a positive impact. The next concern is about, are there other methods of increasing women's participation in elections? Is reservation on the only option? Are there any alternative methods through which you can encourage more women to participate in elections? That is the question. You actually have few methods. Like, for example, how about providing reservation within political parties? Instead of reserving seats for elections, how about forcing our political parties through the constitution to provide reservation for women within the party? This is one possibility, one alternate method. Or how about having dual candidates from at least few constituencies? See, right now there is only one MP in each constituency, correct? But there was a time before 1960s where some constituencies had dual candidates. There can be one male candidate and one female candidate. Just like how in schools and colleges, in the classrooms, how the leaders are appointed by the teachers, right? One male student, one female student will be chosen to act as the monitor of the class, right? How about providing dual representation? One women candidate, one female candidate, at least in some select constituencies. These are some alternative options available. Of course, they have their own pros and cons. I'm not saying this is the solution, right? They do have their own advantages and disadvantages. But this could also be thought of as an alternative to providing reservation in election bodies. Is that clear? Providing reservation within political parties could solve some of the problems. But however, there is no guarantee that the parties will give tickets to women to contest elections. That is a drawback. With regard to membership, they might add more women. But what's the guarantee they'll give them tickets? What's the guarantee they'll allow them to contest elections? That concern will always be there. With dual candidates, the problem is it could lead to dual authority, right? It could confuse the voters, it could bring inefficiencies, and it could disrupt the electoral system itself. So there are some disadvantages, but definitely there are alternatives. All right. Then finally, the last concern is with regard to how exactly the proposal will be implemented. How will the changes be done, right? How will delimitation be carried out? Because delimitation itself is a controversial topic. As I told you, delimitation is dependent on population data. It's dependent on census data. Now, there are certain states which are opposed to upcoming delimitation exercises because they fear they might lose out on the seats because of reduction in their population. Some South Indian states like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, right? These are more forward states, more progressive states and better developed states in India. And over decades, they have done better with regard to governance. They have better implemented family planning methods, provided better education, created better jobs. So as a result, population has gone down. They have achieved replacement level fertility. They have even reduced their fertility rate below the total fertility rate. They have brought down their TFR below 2.1, which is replacement level fertility, which means some of the states which are more developed, they are seeing a declining population, which means their seats will get reduced in the parliament due to less population. But other states which have largely remained backward, right, which have failed to control their population, like UP, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Bihar, they will benefit because they are going to get more seats in the parliament due to more population in their states. In a way, you'll be rewarding the poor performing states and punishing the better performing states. So there is opposition against delimitation. This could affect the very process of implementing women's reservation, right? So there are many related concerns. When will the census happen? Right? What basis will be used to identify the constituencies to reserve the constituencies for women candidates? How will the delimitation commission rotate the constituencies? Right? All these are unanswered questions. We don't have answers as of now. So there will be a lot of challenges in implementation. It will all depend on how the census will be done, how delimitation will be carried out. Is that clear? So there are definitely some roadblocks and hurdles, but definitely you can't dispute the logic of this policy. That is why almost every political party has given unanimous support without opposing reservation for women. It's got near unanimous support. All right. So we'll take up a practice question based on what we have discussed. Reservation for women in the parliament and state legislatures is seen as a game changer with regard to promoting gender equality. It's a statement. But the idea and its implementation is loaded with challenges. 15 marks question for 250 words. So how do you approach the answer? In the introduction, you can explain why women's reservation is important. Or you can talk about the latest development, set the context, saying that the 128th Constitutional Amendment Bill has been passed in the Parliament that provides for so and so reservation. And then in the body, you can go on to explain the brief history and the significance and the need for women's reservation. Once you do this, then talk about the challenges in the next half of the body. Discuss the challenges in implementation, the various concerns associated with it, and then conclude your answer by saying that women's reservation can be a great tool for women empowerment and gender equality. But there are some concerns associated with its implementation. If they are sorted, definitely it can be a tool for women empowerment and gender equality. Also mention other measures are needed as well, like focus on education, healthcare, etc. Even they are needed along with reservation in elected bodies. That is what will provide for empowerment of women. So ensure that your answer is well-rounded with sufficient data and examples, right? So that completes your answer. Now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is related to science and technology, international relations, and as well as ethics. I feel it's a very interesting topic, a very trending topic as well. It's related to space exploration and the importance of ethics, the importance of creating an ethical global framework when it comes to space activities. Now, first, let's see why this topic is in news. What is the context here? See, recently there have been some major space missions, including India's Chandrayaan 3, right? Russia, China, Japan, NASA, European Space Agency, ISRO, and many private space companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin. Today you have space startups in India. So there is a renewed interest in space exploration, not just in launching satellites, but in exploring the moon, in exploring Mars, in exploring Venus, Mercury, and the sun, in better studying the solar system and the Milky Way, and even in sending intergalactic missions, right? So there is a deep interest of late. You are seeing a renewed interest as far as space competition is concerned. We had seen such competition back in the Cold War period. From 1950s to 1980s, there was intense competition between US and Soviet Union with regard to space activities and space exploration, right? After that, there was a period of silence. But in the last 10 years especially, there is renewed interest, particularly in the last 5 years, there is renewed interest in exploring celestial bodies. There are talks about establishing colonies on the moon and the Mars. There are discussions and ideas about extracting resources from celestial bodies. Today, we have landed missions on asteroids. We have collected samples from asteroids and brought it back to Earth. For example, the OSIRIS-REx mission, which is in the news. right? This mission of NASA has brought samples from the Bennu asteroid. Japan has brought asteroid samples back to Earth, right? Now, India is working on the next mission to the moon, where it will be a sample collection mission, which has been done by US, Soviet Union, that is Russia, and even China. They've all collected lunar samples. So India also has these ambitious plans. We are planning Gaganyaan mission, right, to place Indian astronauts in orbit, which would be our first human spaceflight program. We have deployed major telescopes like the James Webb Space Telescope, which is giving tremendous insight into the universe and the very evolution of the universe. It's providing us new answers to understand how life originated, how the universe originated, right? These fundamental questions are finally getting some answers due to the advancements happening in space technology and due to enhanced space exploration by governments and private companies. So this has triggered a space race, right? And this is where concerns come up. Concerns come up with regard to how the celestial bodies will be used. Will countries weaponize and militarize space? Because there are countries which have already placed weapons or which have weapons capability in space, right? Countries like US, Russia, China, and India, they have militarized the space by deploying and testing anti-satellite weapons. They have the ability to target enemy satellites. They have the ability to station ballistic missiles, right? And if required, they can even station nuclear warheads in outer space or on a celestial body. So stationing nuclear warheads and missiles in outer space is a possibility. So there are concerns regarding possible militarization of space, how the space race will play out, and how we are going to explore celestial bodies and how we will exploit resources in the future. Right? Will we set up colonies on the moon and the Mars? Will we exploit resources from these celestial bodies and bring them back to Earth? Will we send humans to other celestial bodies? Right? There are a lot of possibilities that exist. And as a result, this domain has to be well regulated through a global framework. Certain basic do's and don'ts have to be established. An ethical framework has to be created because space is not anyone's property. Space does not belong to any country. Now, for example, just because India landed at the south pole of the moon, India was the first country to land at the south pole of the moon, doesn't mean the south pole of the moon belongs to India. Now, doesn't mean US, Russia, China, or Japan, or European countries, they can claim sovereignty on celestial bodies. No country can do that because space is a common resource. It's a common heritage of humanity. It belongs to humanity at large, right? No country, no government, no individual, no company owns outer space. This is very, very important. And to ensure that everyone has equal access to space and all the activities are well regulated, we need a global ethical framework. Is that clear? Now, UPSC might test you on these lines. It might ask a question. Instead of just focusing on Chandrayaan 3 mission and other missions of ISRO, such a question can come up, which might surprise many students. So let me discuss the current treaties which are in place to regulate space activities and what issues do we face with regard to space exploration. We already have a few treaties in place. There is a committee that was established in 1959 by the United Nations regarding the peaceful uses of outer space. As the space race began between US and Soviet Union during the Cold War, the United Nations realized that space could become militarized. These two superpowers could start militarizing space, deploying weapons as well, and restrict access to other countries. So to prevent this from happening, UN established a committee to create a framework so that outer space is used only for peaceful activities, only for research and exploration, not for militarization. This led to the Outer Space Treaty. The Outer Space Treaty, which consists of an agreement signed in 1963 and 1967. This has prohibited the testing and deployment of nuclear weapons in outer space. It also prohibits deployment of WMDs, or weapons of mass destruction, in outer space, like nuclear weapons, chemical, biological weapons, right? Such large scale weapons which cause large scale destruction, they cannot be stationed in outer space according to the Outer Space Treaty. Two agreements were signed under it in 1963 and 1967. It has prohibited the testing of nuclear weapons, and it has prohibited the deployment and the stationing of WMDs, or weapons of mass destruction. In a way, it restricts military activities, but however, ordinary weapons can still be stationed. For example, a regular ballistic missile and even anti-satellite weapons, ASAT weapons, they can still be deployed and stationed in outer space, because the Outer Space Treaty does not prohibit all weapons. It only prohibits nuclear testing and WMDs, like nuclear weapons and other large destructive weapons. But ordinary weapons like just a regular ballistic missile or anti-satellite weapons can be deployed, can be stationed, right, in outer space. But at least it restricts the military activities in outer space. Now, please take a look at the key provisions of the treaty. I want you guys to be familiar with this. It ensures that space is available for the benefit of mankind. Space, like I said, is a common heritage, a common resource. This is very clearly established under the Outer Space Treaty. See, for example, a similar provision exists with regard to Antarctica. With regard to the South Pole of the Earth, it has been set up as a common resource. Countries can't claim sovereignty at Antarctica. Even though many research stations have been set up, many countries have a bigger presence and influence in Antarctica, right? Antarctica cannot be claimed by any country or government. They can't claim sovereignty and prevent access to others. It is a shared heritage, a common resource of the world, which means everyone has equitable access to Antarctica. To regulate this, there is a treaty called the Antarctica Treaty, the Treaty of Antarctica. There is a treaty in place that regulates these activities. Even the Antarctica Treaty has prohibited military activities near the South Pole. Testing of nuclear weapons, militarization, deployment of military vessels is prohibited under the treaty. Only scientific exploration is allowed. And every country has access to Antarctica. No government can claim sovereignty over Antarctica. So just like the Antarctica Treaty, Outer Space Treaty also establishes outer space as a common resource for mankind. It ensures that everyone has free access. All governments have access to space. No one can appropriate space for themselves. No country can claim sovereignty, as I told you. And they cannot place nuclear weapons and WMDs on any celestial orbit or even in the Earth's orbit. They can't station any nuclear weapons or WMDs on the moon or another planet or another asteroid. They can't station or test nuclear weapons and WMDs in the outer orbit, right, in the Earth's orbit. All of this is prohibited. Such military activities are very specifically banned, but ordinary weapons can be deployed. Like ballistic missiles, they do breach the atmosphere, they reach outer space and take a parabolic path to strike the target. So it is technically possible to station ballistic missiles in orbit, just like a satellite is stationed in orbit. Then anti-satellite weapons can be deployed and tested and used as well. There's no prohibition on that. So apart from these weapon platforms, rest of it, they are prohibited under the treaty. The treaty establishes that space is exclusively for peaceful purposes, only for research, only for scientific studies, only for understanding our universe, only for exploring resources. Other than that, space cannot be used for any other activity, right? It is exclusively for peaceful purposes, and every mission, every astronaut is like an envoy of humanity. Be it American astronaut or Russian astronaut or Indian astronaut, right? Without nationality and their limitations, they act as the envoys of mankind in outer space. They represent all of humanity. Governments are responsible for all the space activities. That is, for example, space activities generates a lot of debris and waste. The concerned government will be responsible for clearing the debris and the waste. See, recently, a part of India's launch vehicle, ISRO's launch vehicle, was found on the coast of Australia. It generated a lot of curiosity on social media, and experts finally concluded that this golden colored tank, which was found on a coast of on a beach in Australia, it was a spent part of one of our launch vehicles, most likely the PSLV. So ISRO has to take ownership. Since it's a ISRO component, India's ISRO has to ensure to clean up that waste material which has fallen near Australia. That is codified here under Outer Space Treaty. Similarly, there is debris in outer space. Whenever you launch space vehicles and spacecrafts, a lot of debris is left behind, right? Small components, the left behind parts of launch vehicles and spacecrafts, they keep orbiting the Earth, and we have lakhs and lakhs of such particles, from very minute particles like the size of a nail, right, to very big components. They are flying around in outer space and they threaten future space activities. Potentially, the space debris can crash into other spacecraft and other satellites, and it could trigger a chain reaction, destroying almost all satellites and preventing future space exploration. So, there is a lot of concern about space debris. So, tackling space debris, dealing with all the waste, taking ownership of space activities is the responsibility of the concerned country, the concerned government. They are liable for the damages, and they have a responsibility to avoid any hazardous contamination of space and celestial bodies. Is that clear? They can't introduce hazardous agents, chemical, biological agents in outer space that could pollute outer space. So such restrictions are placed under the treaty, and this forms one legal framework, right, that promotes ethical behavior in outer space. Then we have the Moon Agreement. The Moon Agreement of 1979, adopted by the UN General Assembly. In 1979, the UN General Assembly adopted the Moon Agreement as US and Soviet Union managed to land astronauts on the moon. As humans started walking on the moon, collecting samples, conducting experiments, regulating human activities on the moon became essential, and a specific agreement was brought out. It mandates that exploration of the moon is only for the larger humanity, not for any country or any government. That's why Prime Minister Modi made a very interesting and a very important statement. When Chandrayaan 3 successfully landed the Vikram lander and Pragya rover, PM Modi said that this success is not just India's success, it's a success for the world. Because the benefits, the scientific data will be available for the whole scientific community of the world. PM Modi said it's a mission for humanity, not just for India. This is in line with the principles of the Moon Agreement. Exploration of the moon and the benefits arising out of it cannot be claimed by just one country. One country can't have sole access. There should be equitable access. Its environment should not be disrupted. The UN should be informed if any future stations, human habitations are set up. UN should be informed about it. If the natural resources of the moon are exploited in the future, it will be for the common heritage of mankind. It will be for common benefit of the mankind. So this is a self-regulating agreement on governments and space agencies around the world. So we do have these global frameworks in place, but however, it is not sufficient. Because as you saw, there are some discrepancies. It does not prohibit other weapons and anti-satellite weapon testing. Current provisions, they don't deal with space debris effectively, right? It does not prevent space race between big powers because there is a geopolitical angle involved. So just like US, Soviet Union competed, India, China are competing, right? US, Russia are competing. So this geopolitical competition should not harm the outer space. That is the focus. So that is why it is suggested that we need a new ethical framework. We need a new ethical framework to regulate space exploration for the larger benefit of humanity. Is that clear? The whole purpose should be to prevent militarization, prevent a space race, prevent the geopolitical misuse of space and its resources, and promote only peaceful scientific exploration of the space. So, any such ethical framework will have to codify the peaceful usage of outer space. Right now, the provisions of Outer Space Treaty are not enough. As I told you, it still does not deal with weaponization of space. It allows other ordinary weapons to be stationed, including ballistic missiles and anti satellite weapons. This has to be curbed. It should be firmly established that space is part of common heritage. It should deal with planetary protection because there could be celestial bodies and extraterrestrial life which might threaten Earth in the future. There might be an asteroid headed towards Earth. There might be alien life, extraterrestrial life, which might pose a threat. So, dealing with planetary threats, providing planetary protection should be dealt with. Then, safeguarding the environment from any pollution, from any debris, from any hazards should be incorporated. This framework should promote transparent sharing of data, sharing of information between countries and between space agencies. Any space resource should be fairly utilized and there should be restrictions on over exploitation. Right? We humans are driven by greed. We've already destroyed Earth. We need not destroy space as well. So there should be restrictions in such an ethical framework which limits over exploitation and ensures that the resources are for the larger benefit of mankind. It should also address other upcoming sectors like space tourism. This has already become a very lucrative market. Many private space companies are offering this as a tourist recreational activity. Right? Of course, right now it's very expensive, but going forward, space tourism is going to pick up. Right? We might even see human civilizations coming up on the moon, Mars, and other celestial bodies. So all these activities, they have to be regulated and it should promote global collaboration and there should be a global governance framework to deal with space activities. All these provisions have to be contained in a new ethical framework. This should ideally be brought out to the United Nations, and all countries have to cooperate and collaborate for this initiative. Is that clear? So, this explains the ongoing competition, the renewed interest in space exploration, right? The geopolitical angle, the militarization involved in it, and the current framework and what changes can be done. Why a new ethical framework is needed. So, this understanding, I think, is very important. You can get a question in IR or maybe even in science and technology or even in ethics, maybe even an essay topic. So, please take up this question. As outer space exploration re-emerges as an area of competition, it is pertinent that spacefaring nations must respect the established ethics of outer space. The keyword is missing. Please take the keyword. Critically examine. Critically examine this given statement. Is that clear? So we have already discussed the key points, that too in the right order. I'm always going in the structure, in the right structure where you can draw points for introduction, body, and conclusion. So whatever I've explained and given the key points, right, you can use them directly to build your answer for this given question. Now moving on to the next topic, the limitations and risks associated with Aadhaar. This topic was making a lot of news last week because Moody's Investor Services, which is a global rating agency, it brought out a report on digital identification systems. Moody's is a very reputed rating agency, right? And it brought out a study which has analyzed digital identification systems around the world. And Aadhaar is one of them, right? As you know, Aadhaar is a unique digital ID, a unique identification for all Indian residents. Through this digital identification, the government is delivering a lot of services. Private industry is delivering a lot of services to you. It has transformed, studied the digital identification landscape in the world, and it has considered India's Aadhaar as well. And in the report, it has highlighted certain risks and limitations associated with Aadhaar. Moody's has raised a concern that Aadhaar system is not very reliable. the biometric details which are captured for verification, right? According to Moody's, it's not very reliable and there are vulnerabilities even in the security of the Aadhaar details. So it has raised concerns about data privacy and data security as well. So let's examine this in slight detail. Let's see what Moody's has said. Let's understand the role of Aadhaar, the contribution of Aadhaar, and let's discuss its limitations and risks. Let's also see what the government has said about it, right? So that completes a comprehensive discussion. Of course, the government of India has rejected these claims of Moody's. The government said that Moody's has not given any credible evidence or data to justify these assumptions and claims. If Moody's is saying that biometric verification is not reliable, right? What is the scientific basis for that? That is what the government has questioned. If Moody's is saying that there is a security risk, privacy risk, where is the evidence for that? So government has rejected these findings, and this is a debatable topic, right? And that's why I find the topic to be interesting and very important for polity and governance as well. So let's quickly understand what is Aadhaar. I'm sure there are some freshers who don't have much of an idea, but others I'm sure you already know everything about Aadhaar. So just treat this as a revision. But so let me explain what is Aadhaar. What role does Aadhaar play and what exactly is Aadhaar? Aadhaar is basically a 12-digit unique ID which is assigned to every Indian resident. Please remember, not to Indian citizens, but to Indian residents. Whoever is residing in India, right? They can apply for Aadhaar. They can get a unique 12-digit number assigned to them, which becomes their unique ID, which can be used for delivering a number of digital services. Is that clear? This unique identification is further verified with your biometric details. Aadhaar captures your biometrics like fingerprints, your iris or retinal scan, which is unique to each individual. All right? Along with capturing your demographic details, your basic demographic details, it collects your biometric details as well. So your name, your date of birth, your address, your age, everything is captured. These are the demographic details. Along with that, biometric details like your fingerprint, iris, retinal scan is also captured. And this system is basically your Aadhaar system. Based on this, a 12-digit unique ID is generated, right? An Aadhaar card is also given to you. And this becomes your unique identification number. Many countries have similar systems. Of course, this is a centralized system maintained at the national level by the UIDAI, the Unique Identification Authority of India. The UIDAI is responsible for enrollment of Indian residents into Aadhaar, for issuing the IDs and for maintaining the whole system and for ensuring the safety of the data. Because this data, which is being stored digitally on cloud computing platforms, right, it is vulnerable to cyber attacks. This data cannot fall into wrong hands, right? It is highly vulnerable to cyber crimes, cyber attacks, and cyber warfare. Because in today's world, data is everything. So criminals, terrorists, hostile intelligence agencies, and governments, they might try to breach the cybersecurity of these platforms, and they might try to get hold of the sensitive data, right? So we have to ensure that the data does not fall into wrong hands and data is not misused. Only those who have access to it, only those who have authorized access, only they should be able to use Aadhaar data. Correct? So this is where UIDAI plays a very important role. Along with enrollment and issuing the IDs and maintaining the whole system and infrastructure, it ensures the safety and protection of your data as well. Is that clear? Now, this project was a pet project of the Manmohan Singh government, the then UPA government. This initiative has been further built upon by the Modi government through the JAM Trinity. Prime Minister Modi has championed the JAM Trinity, that is J for Jan Dhan bank account, so that every citizen, every resident has a bank account. The whole focus here was financial inclusion, to ensure that every individual has a functioning operational bank account to promote formal economic transactions and financial transactions. A for Aadhaar, which ensures unique identification of each individual. And M for mobile phone. If everyone has access to mobile and internet, it gives you connectivity. And through this system, through the JAM Trinity, you can start delivering services to the people. Very effectively, you can deliver services, both public services and private services. For example, the primary focus of the government in implementing Aadhaar and the JAM Trinity was to provide for direct benefit transfer, or DBT. Through this, government benefits are directly being transferred to the bank accounts of the beneficiaries. For example, the subsidies the government gives to farmers and consumers, maybe LPG subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, etc., or scholarships, pensions, which the government is giving to students, to eligible beneficiaries, etc., to old age people, right? Then there are various government schemes where there's a cash transfer involved, like cash benefit is given to pregnant women, right? Wages are paid to Manrega workers under the ambitious Manrega scheme. So all such cash payments of the government is now being done through DBT, direct benefit transfer, which is based on the JAM platform. Right? By linking the bank account with your Aadhaar number and by using mobile phone for OTP, for a two-factor authentication, and by using biometric details for verifying the identification of the person, right? Today, government services, e-governance, has become extremely efficient, thus providing for good governance in the country. This is one of the biggest benefits of Aadhaar, right? From transferring subsidies to scholarships, government benefits, to Manrega payments, they've all been made digital, and cash payments are directly taking place into the bank account of the beneficiaries. Now, the biggest advantage here is that the middlemen have been eliminated. This reduces leakages and corruption in the system. Previously, when manual transfers, manual verifications were being done, lot of fake documents will be done, fake beneficiaries will be listed, duplicate names will be listed, right? Ghost beneficiaries will be created by local officials and politicians to take away the government money, right? They divert the government allocated funds, right? Because of a corrupt nexus between government officials and politicians, etc. And it was resulting in lot of leakage of government funds because of corruption. This was making our government schemes inefficient, draining our budget without any positive impact on the ground. Now, this has been effectively plugged. These leakages and diversions have been plugged because of the JAM Trinity, which has been powered by Aadhaar and its biometric verification. Is that clear? So today, Aadhaar is not just an ID document. It's not just a document for your personal identity and your address proof, right? It is a vital tool for service delivery in the country. Public services are being delivered to you more efficiently. Even private services, banks, financial institutions, mobile and internet service providers, they're all depending on the Aadhaar system to verify the customer, to carry out the KYC process. For example, if you open a bank account, if you file IT returns, if you invest in the stock market, if you invest in mutual funds, right? Any financial activity is tied to your Aadhaar. Let's say you buy a new property, right? The registration of the property, even their Aadhaar is involved. So by using Aadhaar, several frauds can be checked. The verification of the identity of the customer can be done. Know your customer process has become very simple. It has become paperless. Previously, companies were spending a lot of money and effort in visiting the houses of people, conducting the checks, verifying the documents. Now everything has shifted online thanks to the Aadhaar system, right? You'll get an OTP on your mobile phone, you verify your details, your biometrics can be verified, and this unique identification has transformed the very digital landscape of India and it has become the central pillar of the digital public infrastructure of India. Even your payment gateways like UPI systems, right? They're all based on the digital public infrastructure, which is largely standing on the Jam Trinity and the Aadhaar platform, right? So Aadhaar has definitely transformed the delivery of services in the country. It has a lot of advantages. I can still continue to talk about it. But however, there are some genuine concerns. There are some genuine risk factors. Since Aadhaar was conceptualized, critics have always pointed out that Aadhaar could breach your privacy. Since sensitive data, including your biometric data, is being held, if the data leaks, or if the data is stolen, or if cyber criminals or cyber warfare attempts result in the compromise of the data, this will breach your privacy. It will breach your data security. Is that clear? Along with the risk of misuse of the data and breach of your privacy, this might lead to mass surveillance. Intelligence agencies will find it very easy to track every activity, every movement that you make, because all your activities are tied to your Aadhaar. Now, let's say you get a new credit card, you book a hotel room, you book a flight ticket, right? Every single activity can be easily tracked with the Aadhaar platform. So potentially governments, ruling parties might misuse this powerful tool to carry out mass surveillance and targeted surveillance, which is a violation of your constitutional rights, your fundamental rights. This issue came up at the Supreme Court as well. At the Supreme Court, Aadhaar was challenged on privacy grounds, on the grounds of violation of fundamental rights. But Supreme Court upheld Aadhaar. It upheld Aadhaar as constitutional. But however, it asked the government to be cautious. It asked the government to take precautions to prevent any misuse or abuse of the data, right? So Moody's has flagged some concerns and limitations of this system. Moody's has pointed out that verification of Aadhaar biometrics is not reliable every time in a country like India. According to Moody's, in hot and humid climate, in a tropical country like India, manual workers and farmers, their biometric details may not match all the time. Because people who are involved in hard physical labor, right, their fingerprints would have been erased to an extent. So when they try to access government benefits, let's say they want to withdraw their pension funds, they want to withdraw the Manrega payment, every time biometric verification has to be done. But if the verification fails, there is a risk of exclusion of genuine beneficiaries. And this has happened in many cases. Genuine beneficiaries at the ground level who are supposed to receive government benefits have been denied the benefits because the system failed to authenticate their biometrics. Or data entered could be wrong. There could be a typo or a data entry mistake which has been made, and beneficiaries might lose out on access to government programs. They may not get the benefits of government welfare schemes. This affects socio-economic welfare in the country and it excludes the genuine beneficiaries. This is a major risk factor, right? The lack of reliability of the verification systems, the biometric systems, and the chances of manual laborers, farmers not being able to verify their biometrics, right? That too in a hot, humid country like India, does pose a significant challenge. But again, Moody's has not provided enough evidence to substantiate this argument. That's what the government is saying. The government of India is confident that Aadhaar is very reliable, right? But there are many instances, even apart from Moody's, various media outlets and other experts, civil society organizations, they have brought out several incidents where biometric verification has failed, or wrong details have been entered in the system, or Aadhaar has not been seeded with the bank account of the beneficiary. And because of that, genuine beneficiaries have lost access to government benefits. So this remains a definite concern. So Moody's is suggesting that countries should adopt a decentralized digital ID platform to address the security risks and vulnerabilities. That's a suggestion by Moody's. Instead of having a centralized platform like UIDAI, which maintains all the data in a centralized manner, it has suggested a blockchain model. Blockchain is a digital register. It's a digital ledger, which is the foundation for your digital currencies and cryptocurrencies. This technology has many other applications. In a centralized system, a central authority is maintaining the database. In a decentralized system based on blockchain, there is no central authority. Instead, a peer-to-peer network, a decentralized peer-to-peer network is updating the data and maintaining the data, thus eliminating the risk of fraud, wrong entries, and any misuse. So decentralized digital identity is being suggested as a solution by Moody's, not just to India, but other countries as well. Since there are limitations and risks associated with centralized systems like Aadhaar, Moody's is suggesting a decentralized digital identity based on blockchain technology to prevent frauds, misuse, and to protect the privacy and security of users' data. All right. Now, the government might dismiss all the concerns, but there are some serious risks that have come up, which was flagged by the CAG of India. Government might dismiss Moody's recommendations, right? It's a private entity. But government cannot ignore the recommendations of CAG, which is a constitutional body. The Comptroller and Auditor General of India has brought out an audit of UIDAI, and it has pointed out that there have been incidents where privacy security have been compromised in cyber attacks. It has found out cases where data has leaked. Unauthorized people have gained access to Aadhaar data. Now, this is very, very serious. It has also come across incidents where there are flaws in the enrollment process and in biometric verification. That is, wrong details have been entered. Duplicate documents are present. The very purpose of Aadhaar was to eliminate duplication. But CAG audit has shown that there are many duplicate enrollments where people with the same picture, same biometrics have multiple cards in their name. This defeats the very purpose of the system. And there have been instances where biometric verification has failed, and this has been documented by the CAG. So CAG also has these concerns. It has brought them out. So government has to pay attention to these limitations and risks. So you might ask, what is the solution? Solution is not to remove Aadhaar system. That's not the solution. That's an extreme measure. Aadhaar has tremendous advantages, as I explained. It has transformed governance in the country. It has transformed the delivery of public and private services in the country. So it has few flaws. So government has to periodically review, invite a feedback, and accordingly carry out a course correction. That is all is needed. Instead of dismissing the concerns just by rejecting the findings, just by asking for more proof, the government should be welcoming of such reports. The government should look into these cases that come up, conduct a thorough periodic review every now and then, right? This is a system in progress. It's a effort in progress. No system is perfect. Aadhaar is wonderful. It's transformative. It has a lot of benefits, correct? But there are flaws as well. There are mistakes as well. So unless and until you're honest about it, unless and until you're open to thorough reviews, you can never correct the system. You can't make it a perfect system. So the feedback mechanism is important. Based on that, the government can initiate course correction regularly. This should become a continuous process. That is what you can suggest in your answers. So look at the practice question. Aadhaar has transformed the delivery of public and private services, but concerns remain regarding its reliability and risks. Discuss. So you talk about its advantages, the role of Aadhaar, the significance of the Aadhaar platform, and then discuss the limitations and risks, and then give a way forward or a solution at the end in your conclusion. Got it? Now let's proceed towards the Kurukshetra magazine. As I told you, we are taking up the August edition of Kurukshetra that focused on the topic of nutrition and health. It focused on the role of nutrition with regard to health of women and children in the country. It's a very, very important topic. It's a social issue. It's an economic issue as well. The topics are relevant for GS1, GS2, GS3, and even your essay paper. So I've chosen two articles. One article is adequate nutrition for women and children, and there's another related article, right? So let's have a comprehensive discussion on this. I'm going to club both the topics. Of course, it's a continuation. Both are connected, right? Whatever we study here in the fourth topic is connected to the fifth topic. So some points are a repetition. I'll try to avoid the repetition, but I hope you guys can see the connection, the interconnection. So let's start talking about the role of nutrition, the role of adequate nutrition for ensuring the well-being of women and children in the country, not just in India, but around the world in general. As you know, nutrition plays a critical role in human development, right? Our physical growth, our mental development, our cognitive abilities, our emotional abilities, the development of our brain, the development of our emotions, the development of our thought and cognitive process, everything is tied to what we consume. That's why it's always said, you are what you eat, right? What you consume inside, what you take inside your body is what determines everything about you. From your physical growth, your physical attributes, to your mental traits, your mental development, right? To your cognitive abilities. Everything is dependent on your nutrition, the food that you consume, the water that you take. Now, the question is the food nutrient enough? The food shouldn't just fill your stomach. It shouldn't just provide the required calories, right? It should provide the right nutrition. The food we consume should have the right nutrients, macronutrients and micronutrients. It should have the right protein composition, fat and carbohydrate composition. It should have the right micronutrient composition. It should contain iron, folic acid, omega-3 fatty acids, right? And other micronutrients like sodium, magnesium, etc. Such a diet is a balanced diet. It's only such balanced, adequate nutrition which can provide for a healthy human being. Is that clear? Especially women and children, right? Amongst the poor sections in rural areas, they are very, very vulnerable. They are at great risk because their health can be compromised. Their access to education, access to livelihood could get compromised if they don't get adequate nutrition. In many developing nations, underdeveloped countries, right, this is the biggest problem. Hunger, malnutrition has become one of the biggest challenges that is facing the world. Even in few developed countries and advanced economies, hunger and malnutrition is still prevalent to a small extent. But in developing nations like India, hunger and malnutrition is still quite rampant, right? So this has a direct bearing on the health, the well-being, and the development of children, especially children under the age of 5 years. It contributes to various disorders and diseases. It contributes to infant mortality rate and child mortality rate. It threatens the health of pregnant women, right? Hunger and malnutrition could compromise the health and immunity of pregnant women, which in turn gets transferred to the kid. So that is why it's very important to pay attention to adequate, healthy, balanced nutrition. Is that clear? So if you look at women's nutrition, all right, ensuring adequate nutrition for women is absolutely critical, not just for the health and well-being of the women, but also for the kid that the woman is going to bear. Because nutrition is directly linked with your disorders and diseases. As I told you, what you consume, what you don't consume defines your health. If you don't get the right macro and micronutrients, you might suffer from deficiencies, some disorders like anemia, for example. Lack of iron content in your food, in your regular diet, could cause anemia. And anemia is very dangerous for women, right? It leads to drop in their hemoglobin count. The oxygen carrying capacity gets affected, causing various other disorders. And this could have an impact on the children as well, on the kids that the woman is going to have. Especially pregnant women are extremely vulnerable, right? Maternal health in general, childbearing ability, child rearing ability could get affected if women do not get adequate nutrition. The overall welfare of the family could get compromised, because it's always said that if you educate a woman and if you empower a woman, the whole family will transform. This is very true. If women are not getting adequate nutrition, if their health is compromised, if they're suffering from diseases and disorders, right, the whole family status will get affected. It will affect families' income levels. It will affect the family's education status, its livelihood, the stability of the family. Overall health and well-being of the family gets compromised if you don't protect maternal health. Pregnant women in particular are at greater risk due to hunger and malnutrition, as it could cause low birth weight in the infant. It could lead to stillbirth and even contribute to high levels of maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate. MMR and IMR, these are key indicators to track the progress of your healthcare sector, to track your healthcare initiatives. Countries which have high MMR and IMR, they clearly are not focusing on nutrition of women and pregnant women and children. Undernourished women, right, end up becoming undernourished mothers. So it causes higher mortality rate amongst pregnant women and affects reproductive health and in general the overall health and well-being of the women and the children. So it's very, very essential to pay adequate attention to this issue. That is why even the United Nations has a goal to achieve zero hunger. Sustainable Development Goal number 2 is focused on zero hunger. Goal number 3 and 4 are related to it. Goal number 3 deals with education and health and well-being, and they are related to your nutrition, right? If you're not well fed, if you're not taking nutritious food and sufficient food to match your nutritional requirement, how can you study? How can you concentrate? How can you grow your cognitive intellectual abilities? How can you improve your health? So your education, your health, your contribution to the society and the country will get compromised if you don't have good nutrition, right? So there are many challenges here with regard to women's nutrition. First challenge is the gap in awareness. Many women are not even aware with regard to the impact of poor nutrition. They don't know what will happen when they consume a poor diet, right? They're not aware what kind of disorders and diseases will come, how it affects their pregnancy and how it affects the kid. This lack of awareness is something that needs to be tackled. All right. Then if you just look at women, I'll come to children later. If you just look at women, right, either many of them are underweight, they're malnourished, they don't get adequate nutrition, they suffer from various disorders, or there are others who are obese, who are overweight. So this again affects the health of women. See, we are not body shaming here. Please don't get us wrong. Of course, with men as well, the problem could be there. Men could be underweight, men could be obese. But here we are talking about women and the child, their overall nutritional status, their health, and how it affects the society, how it affects the family, right? So maintaining ideal weight is extremely crucial, and this is dependent on your food, on your diet, on your nutrition levels. Of course, there is a gender bias in the society. In patriarchal orthodox societies like India, where it's a male-dominated society, men have access to good food. In families, there is a discrimination between the male child and the female child. In a country where female infants are killed by their own family members, right? It's very possible that female children are not given nutritious food, especially in poor families, in rural areas. Nutritious food is kept reserved for the male, for the boy child, whereas the girl child is denied good nutritious food. Such a discrimination is seen in our society, right? This is an atrocious practice, but it does happen in many households where there is inequitable food distribution within the household, where men are getting nutritious food, the boy child is getting good food, but women and the girl child are being denied. The gender bias plays a role So question is, how do you tackle this? Access to services, ensuring access to nutritious food, clean water, hygiene, sanitized water, ensuring that adequate education, awareness is spread amongst all social classes and age groups, and implementing schemes, food security schemes, implementing nutrition oriented schemes, and schemes focused on the health of women and children, schemes focused on the education of women and children. They all become a priority to tackle this challenge because they're all interconnected, they are interrelated. And you should also have an effective monitoring system to know where the country stands, to see what progress we are making with regard to nutrition of women and even children. We should have an effective monitoring system in place to periodically evaluate the progress and then accordingly make course corrections. So these are the challenges in front of the government, and the government of India is trying to overcome these challenges. Now, if you look at child mortality rates in the country, if you look at the child mortality rates, it is directly connected to their nutritional status. Infant mortality and child mortality, especially under the age of 5 years, is directly linked to their nutritional status. Now you can see here in the graph, which is based on data from National Family Health Survey 4 and 5, you can look at the extent of anemia, stunting, wasting, severely wasted and overweight children amongst our population. These are an outcome of nutrition. It's a nutrition related outcome. Anemia is due to lack of iron intake. Stunting is a condition where it arises due to undernourishment. It's a result of malnutrition and hunger. If children don't have access to nutritious food, they might suffer from stunting. It means they will not achieve the ideal height for their age. For their given age and weight, they'll not achieve the right height. They'll be stunted. Their growth becomes physically stunted. They'll not grow to the right height. Their organs will not well develop. Their brain will not develop. Right? This directly affects their intellectual, cognitive abilities and their ability to function as well. They'll not be physically strong. They can't take up work. They can't contribute to the society. They can't contribute to the country. Right? Similarly, wasting is a condition where it's again because of malnutrition, undernourishment, where a kid fails to achieve the right weight, the correct weight for their given height. They will be underweight basically. You might have seen kids from very poor families, right? Their bones are seen, they look very fragile. That is a case of wasting, where they haven't achieved the ideal weight for their given height and age. So stunting and wasting are major conditions that causes many diseases and disorders. It affects mental growth, physical growth, contributes to many diseases, and as a result, it affects the growth and well-being of the child. In many ways, they become handicapped, right? Severe wasting occurs due to severe hunger. When there is severe hunger, right, not just malnutrition, when there is severe hunger, if the kid is not even getting one proper meal per day, it leads to severe wasting, where the kid would have lost a lot of weight, would have never attained the ideal weight for their height and age. Or there could be cases amongst the urban population and the rich population where kids are being overfed with junk food and processed food, and that could lead to obesity and overweight, right? Now look at the numbers here. The numbers are quite alarming, quite high for India. With regard to anemia cases have gone up amongst children. Look at the data from Survey 4 and Survey 5. Anemia has increased, but stunting, and wasting, these two have declined. We have managed to achieve some progress here. You can see the graph. Cases of stunting and wasting has gone down, which means our nutrition-oriented schemes, our food security programs, they are working well. They're delivering progress. We've definitely done well with regard to tackling hunger and malnutrition in the last 20-30 years. With regard to severely wasted children, The numbers are almost the same, not much of a change, but obesity has gone up. Overweight children have gone up, which means children from middle classes, upper middle classes, the rich families from cities, they're consuming the wrong food. They're consuming more processed food and junk food, which is causing obesity. Now, all these are dangerous conditions, right? We understood how it affects women, how it affects children. Even though we have seen some progress with regard to some indicators like stunting and wasting, we have shown some improvement as per National Family Health Survey. This is the data from 2021. But still, there is a lot to be done, especially with regard to anemia, severe wasting, and obesity. There is still a lot to be done. We need to pay more holistic attention to the issue of maternal health, to the issue of nutrition for pregnant women, early childhood development, right? What food is provided to children in the houses and in schools. All of this has to be taken into account. And of course, poverty, education, health, they are all connected to this. Poor families can't afford nutritious food. That's common sense, correct? Rich families will end up affording unnecessary food items, junk and processed food items, which causes obesity. So keeping in mind these aspects, right, the income levels, the education levels, the health status, and how they are interconnected, how they influence each other. Bad nutrition affects your education. A child which has never got good nutrition cannot become a brilliant child, because the physical growth, the brain development, cognitive, intellectual development is affected, right? A pregnant woman or a child who haven't got right food, they will never have good health, right? Their organs wouldn't be well developed, their immunity will be compromised, they'll suffer from disorders, deficiencies, which compromises their health, and this pushes the whole family into poverty again. As health issues come up, they'll spend more on healthcare. They can't afford basic food again, they can't afford housing, they can't afford education, and it creates a vicious cycle. So to break the vicious cycle, the right intervention has to be done. The right initiatives have to be taken by the government to boost nutrition levels in the country focused on women and children. That is exactly what India has done. We have many important schemes like Poshan Abhiyan. It's a flagship program of the Ministry of Women and Child Development that pays special attention to the nutritional outcomes of children, pregnant women, and lactating mothers. They are given special attention under this initiative. The right nutrition with regard to macro and micronutrients are provided through well-planned, well-implemented interventions. At the hospitals, at the panchayat level, right? Correct intervention is done to provide the required macro, micronutrients to pregnant women, children, and lactating mothers. Then you have the Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, focused on maternal health care. Janani Suraksha Yojana, right? These two important schemes, they focus on empowering pregnant women. It provides cash incentives for women who are looking after their pregnancy well, who are looking after their infant, right? Who are taking the right health measures, who meet the right health requirements. They are rewarded, they are incentivized with a cash benefit. This again boosts nutrition and the overall health of the pregnant woman, the mother, and the child as well. Then you have PM Poshan, Prime Minister Poshan Shakti Nirman, which is the restructured version of the midday meal scheme. See, providing the right food for children in schools is critical, not only for their health, but also for their education. This has become a widely accepted practice around the world. Many countries, many governments, they provide nutritious food for school-going children in the school itself. The midday meal scheme program of India is a massive success. It provides nutritious, warm, cooked food, healthy food for our children, providing adequate nutrients for them. And this is one of the most important schemes. We also have initiatives to track the progress like Poshan Tracker, Niti Aayog's Nourishing India, where the progress is being documented. We are tracking the progress we are making with regard to women nutrition and child nutrition. Then we have ICDS, Integrated Child Development Services, that is implemented by ASHA activists through Anganwadi centers. Under ICDS, children and pregnant women get special focus with regard to their nutritional status. Nutrient supplies are given, like fortified rice, iron supplements, folic acid supplements. Such essential supplements are added through the program, along with ensuring basic nutrition of the mother and the child under ICDS program. Then you have the scheme for adolescent girls, girls in the age group of 14 to 18 who are in the adolescent age group. They are given regular health checkups, nutritional support, because they're about to enter puberty. They're about to menstruate, which leads to physiological changes in their body, right? Which affects their hemoglobin levels as well. So, ensuring right nutrition for adolescent girls is very, very critical to ensure healthy women, right? So, these are the various interventions the government has put in place. So, going forward, we need to address the challenge in providing good nutrition to women and children. We need to further expand these initiatives, ensure universal coverage of these schemes, and reach out to the nooks and corners of the country. Reach out to all children under the age of 5 years, under the age of 15 years. Provide nutritious food in our schools, in our government centers, in hospitals, right? Ensure that women, especially pregnant women and adolescent girls, are getting the right nutrition, including the right micronutrient supply. So this is a holistic approach, starting from early childhood to development, and finally with regard to pregnancy and reproduction. Covering this entire cycle, right? There should be interventions by the government to provide the right nutrition. So related to this topic, please take a question. Critically examine the nutritional status of women and children in India. Suggest measures taken to improve nutritional levels. Very straightforward question based on what we have discussed. Now, coming to the last topic, it is connected to what we have already studied. All right? You just have to understand the connection between nutrition and health and how nutrition can be strengthened through schools and through the education system. It is this interconnection you have to understand. You already know the role of nutrition in determining your health, right? Your physical development, mental development, your intellectual abilities, everything is dependent on nutrition. So poor nutrition causes poor health, and the other way around. Good nutrition gives you good health. So at the school level, nutrition levels can be tackled. Nutritional challenges can be tackled. That is the right place to intervene, where children can be provided good nutrition. This will improve their learning outcomes. If children are given right nutrition, if their health is protected, right, they'll study better. They'll attend schools regularly. They have an incentive to come to school because they're getting warm, nutritious food. They're receiving all the micronutrients, which aids their physical growth, mental growth. So they'll concentrate better. They'll understand better. Their cognitive intellectual abilities will improve. Their physical abilities will improve, where they can become better sportsmen, better athletes as well, right? Or take up extracurricular activities. So learning outcomes will improve in the education system, and overall education status will improve. They'll grow up to become well-groomed adults who will contribute to the society and the country. So understanding this linkage between nutrition, health, and school education is very, very important. Many studies have established that malnutrition has a detrimental impact on cognitive development. That's why 90% of the countries have some kind of health nutrition program in the school itself. Especially in public schools, in government schools, there will be nutrition supply, food that is provided to children to ensure that they are getting nutritious food to meet their nutritional requirement in order to protect their health. Is that clear? So there is actually major priority areas as far as school health and nutrition is concerned. If any government, not just India, if any government wants to implement such health and nutrition schemes at the school level, they need to have the right policies and laws in place. They have to create an enabling environment at the national, provincial, and local level. And they should encourage not just good nutrition and good health, but also the right education. Give them the right awareness and skills. make them aware of the importance of nutrition and healthcare, get them involved in extracurricular activities, especially physical sports and physical activities. This provides for a safe, inclusive, conducive environment for our children, right? That is the responsibility of the state as well, to ensure there is a safe, conducive environment for children. And this is effectively done by providing nutritious meals at the school level itself. So many governments have these policies in place. For example, there is a report called Ready to Learn and Thrive report that's brought out by UNESCO, UNICEF, WHO, Food and Agriculture Organization, and also by the World Food Program. All these global institutions together, UNESCO, UNICEF, WHO, Food and Agriculture Organization, and World Food Program, and few others, they bring out this report called Ready to Learn and Thrive. Under this report, there are some important findings that 9 out of 10 countries are implementing school health and nutrition programs, and India is one of them. It shows that such an initiative can be very successful in improving the nutritional status of children, which further improves their health and education status. 3 in 5 countries are including food and nutrition in schools, and more than 100 countries have even vaccination that's provided through schooling system itself. Even our universal immunization program has been integrated into our schooling system, into ICDS and our nutritional programs. This helps the children to build immunity against diseases, against vaccine preventable diseases, right? And there are many countries which have included physical education as a compulsory subject in the curriculum. And 80% of them have a school feeding policy. And nearly half of the children enrolled in primary schools are receiving meals around the world. These are some important findings in this report. Now, you don't have to remember and mug up this, but just having an idea that around the world, providing nutrition through schools, through education, has been the practice, has been the norm to tackle nutrition-related deficiencies and disorders. That is the connection that exists between nutrition, health, and schooling. All right? So in India as well, health and nutrition is a priority at the school level. This became very, very clear during the pandemic itself. When the pandemic hit and schools were shut down, right? Students had no longer had access to midday meal program. So as a result, since they were not attending schools, they were not getting access to midday meals, their health and nutrition got compromised during the pandemic. This itself has given us proof regarding the role of midday meal schemes that are provided through the schooling system. If we have to achieve our sustainable development goals, if we have to achieve good health and well-being and achieve quality education, right? To achieve the goal number 3 and 4 and achieve goal number 2, that is zero hunger, we have to incorporate such policies, and that's exactly what India has been doing. If you look at the National Health Policy of 2017, it gives utmost priority for nutrition for women and children. Even the National Education Policy, it has integrated health, nutrition, and education. It highlights the importance of midday meals and nutritious food being provided at schools, right? So there are many examples we can give. All the initiatives that we discussed, the Poshan Abhiyan, the PM Poshan, right? The maternity-related health programs, ICDS initiative, then the scheme for adolescent girls, all these programs that focus on nutrition of children, they are being administered at the school level itself at a very young age in order to ensure the healthy development of our children. Is that clear? So going forward, India has to continue with this approach. Children are the bedrock of our society. So it's critical to ensure healthy women, and that contributes to healthy children. And that is a cycle we need to maintain. Right? We have to protect women, their healthcare, their well-being, protect the families, protect the children as well. And all of this is linked to nutrition. The education status, health status, their income status and livelihood, everything is connected to nutrition. So this is the whole focus of the magazine. The entire magazine is actually focused on this theme, right? So if you can understand this, you can answer any question on nutrition. There can be a question in social issues or governance or even in economy. All right. So be prepared. Malnutrition destroys a child's development, upbringing, and education. That's a statement. Discuss in the context of India and elucidate the measures being taken. You basically have to explain how malnutrition affects the development, upbringing, and education of a child, give illustrations in the introduction and body, and then explain what measures are being taken in India to counter the risks. That's it, as simple as that. Is that clear? So this completes my detailed discussion of all the 5 articles. I hope you guys have understood everything. Now let me look at some questions. Let's answer all the doubts that have been marked by the subject experts. And after that, we can end the session for today. Shyam is asking, is there no reservation in parliament and state legislative assemblies? What reservation are you referring to? If you're referring to women's reservation, no. Before the bill, we didn't have reservation for women in parliament and legislative assemblies. Bodapu is asking, what happens if the misuse of reservation goes on? If reservation is misused, like if proxy candidates are used by male members of the family, right, that undermines our representative electoral democracy. It further perpetuates the patriarchy in the society. It weakens the cause of women empowerment. Right? That is the drawback. Next, Ananda Varshini is asking, women from OBC category are not represented in the reservation. See, women from OBC category can have general reservation in the general category. But within OBC reservation, there is no special reservation given for women. Sabir is asking, latest amendment before women reservation bill is 105, but women reservation bill is 128. How is it possible? See, please understand, bill and acts are different. Only if the bill is passed by both houses and assented to by the president, only then it becomes an act. And not all constitutional amendment bills have been passed. Is that clear? That is why there is a mismatch. We have 128 constitutional amendment bills and only 105 have been enacted. That is why the last Constitutional Amendment Act was 105, but the bill is 128. There is a mismatch, which means around 20 plus constitutional amendment bills, they were not passed by the parliament or assent was not given by the president. It didn't become an act. That is why the mismatch. Bodapu is asking why there is no equal reservation for all. How can there be equal reservation? If you give equal reservation for all, then what's the point? Right? If you give, let's say, reservation for men and women, reservation for all castes, all communities, then what's the point? Then you're creating a level playing field again. The very purpose of reservation is to give a upliftment for the weaker, vulnerable sections. So reservation will be different. It can't be the same. It can't be equal. Afreen is asking, sir, can we make laws to prevent the proximity with reservations? I think Afreen is asking, can we make a law to prevent the misuse through proxies? See, problem is, how can you do that? Now, if let's say a person A, a politician A. So this guy is always contesting elections. He controls the power in the constituency. Now that constituency has been reserved for women. So he can't contest. So what he will do, he will put his wife, he will nominate his wife and he'll ensure that his wife wins the election. And from behind the scenes, he's going to control all the decisions, right? His wife is just a puppet, but this man will make all the decisions. So that can't be regulated. The constitutional provision is already clear. The laws are already clear, but on the ground, there is a practical problem here. You can't regulate this. If someone else is controlling the candidate and making all the decisions on their behalf, you can't really control that. So that is a gray area. Saurabh is asking, sir, what could be the reasons for non-inclusion of legislatures of Jammu and Kashmir and Puducherry? See, Jammu and Kashmir and Puducherry have their own unique circumstances. First of all, J&K is yet to have elections. The Union Territory of J&K is yet to witness elections. Puducherry is a different case altogether, right? It's only NCT Delhi, the State Assembly of Delhi, which has been included in the reservation bill, but not Puducherry and J&K. Ambika is asking, does delimitation belong to basic structure? No, it does not. Delimitation is part of an act. Parliament enacts the Delimitation Act. It's not part of the basic structure. Delimitation is just an exercise to draw the constituency boundaries. Akash is asking, can we suggest 33% reservation in total number of candidates nominated by a political party for an election? Yes, you can suggest that it can be made mandatory that political parties should give 33% of the tickets to women candidates. But anyways, that will happen with reserved constituencies. That will happen. Next, Sham is asking, can we take and use minerals that are available in space? Of course, that is the focus of space research and space exploration. Sneha is asking, do you think Moody's is saying this because it is increasing its role in India's fintech sector and utilization of Aadhaar in it? See, Moody's will have a vested interest, but still, whatever Moody's has recommended, it's not wrong. Moody's does have a valid point, as I explained. Even the CAG has a similar conclusion. Varman is asking why poor men are not taken as vulnerable with respect to lack of nutrition, why only women and children? See, even men's nutrition is equally important. This topic is just about women and children, right? Because pregnant women and infants, their health is connected. And this has a very big role to play in the society and in the economy. So focus here was just on women and children. Of course, there could be old age people, there could be disabled people and men, poor men who could be suffering from malnutrition. So there are programs covering that as well. Poshan Abhiyan covers malnutrition and hunger across different communities. But women and children are the focus because they are at the biggest risk. All right. So guys, these were the questions. I think with this, we can close the session for today. I hope you've understood everything. I hope it was a good session. Do let me know how it went in the comments and I'll see you very soon. Right? So we'll catch up next week with the next series of webinars. So till then, take care, revise everything, write answers to the questions based on what we have discussed, and all the best. So good night, take care, see you again.